Stories and information for us. A little background on Dennis. He's a researcher in the neuroscience of innovation. He and his partner, Dr. Bree Hunt, have made a discovery that is being published in the International Journal of Innovation Education and Research. This is a culmination of many, many decades of work with the two of them. He is the author of Wheelie Through the Baboons, which we're going to hear a little bit more about, and the Zen of Innovation Leadership, which will be released very soon this year, and it presents the innovation on command, cognitive strategies of high achievers. For 25 years, he was a founder and CEO of a firm that raised funds and for nonprofit organizations. So as he said, you are my peeps. I've been doing this for many years, planning events and schmoozing donors and clients. So he knows what we do, which is good. And he's married with 4 children, is an avid camper, major traveler, freak, loves all that good stuff too. Favorite century is the 1500 BC. Favorite region is the Congo. Favorite author is Malcolm Gladwell. Favorite TV show is Westworld. So I think we can all relate to him very well. Please welcome Dennis Green to the stage.
Good morning. My interest in innovation was sparked during a motorcycle trip across Africa. Just a couple years before then, my brother died in a car wreck. And imagine if you were my sibling. My sister and I, of course, were crushed, and we discussed how then do we live our lives. All of a sudden, our life's plans had changed dramatically with this new and horrible thing. How then should we live our lives? So we decided jointly to live our lives as fully as we possibly could. It wasn't long after that I found myself on a motorcycle pulling out of Cape Town, South Africa, on the final leg of a month-long trip across Africa, headed towards Point Agulhas, the southernmost tip of Africa. Anybody else been there? It's awesome, I know that. It's beautiful. The road cuts through the side of a mountain. It was a Sunday morning. It was a beautiful day, unlike today, sunny. Cool breeze, perfect temperature. Actually, Cape Town is a lot like San Francisco. Same feel to it, same air temperature. It was a newly paved road. It was 1980, so you can imagine back then life was a little bit different. Now, my need for speed quickly overcame my common sense, and I found myself going 100 miles an hour. And it was a BMW motorcycle, very well balanced, that allowed me to lean so far into those curves that my foot pegs would skim the asphalt. It was as if I was flying, and we were so high on the side of that mountain I could look out and see the curvature of the earth in the ocean, the dark blue ocean against the light blue sky. I could feel the heat on my back and smell the salt air. I was in the zone until I rounded a corner. There, about 200 yards ahead of me, were a pack of baboons blocking the highway. Now, I've always thought of myself as a rational person. So I tried to be rational at that moment. I thought, what could I possibly do? So number one, I thought I could slam on my brakes, stop. I would end up right in the middle of them, where they would jump on my back. I could speed up, hit them like a bowling ball going through bowling pins, where one would probably knock me off and they would eat me. Or I could shoot off the cliff, and if I landed in the ocean, then a great white shark would probably eat me. Exactly. So I'm out of rational options, so I say to myself, what on earth could I possibly do in order that I might live? And in that moment, my subconscious responded with 4 memories that had come from the previous month. And they were like instructions, and they were in the perfect sequence as well. So number 1 was a memory of a time I encountered an eagle in the Drakensberg Mountain that had swooped in. I was only going about a mile an hour around about a 180-degree turn. There on the edge of the little path was a rodent, and this 6-foot wide brown eagle swooped in and snatched this rodent off the cliff right in front of my eyes. It was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. The rodent made the mistake of looking at me, and it was snatched and gone. And it was so cool, I almost went over the cliff after it. I had to suck my body in tight to dance with that motorcycle. So that's what I did at that moment. Then the second memory came, I was coming out of a hut on our trip, and there was about a dozen little baby monkeys crawling all over my motorcycle. They had found my stash of Oreos that I had kept right here, and they were fighting wildly over those. And I thought, oh, this is so cute, I'll get my camera. Until I remembered I left my key in the motorcycle. And what happens if they get a hold of that key and eat it or take it to the next nest or I'm dead meat? So I grab a branch, I go running at them, screaming, and they scatter, just like cockroaches under the light. So noise will scare them. So I turn my headlights, my flashers, the horn, I start screeching the back tire, and those baboons responded. They were up on all fours. What was that? And the third memory was approaching Swaziland. I was again going too fast. There was a tank blocking the road. And I had to make a decision at that point, either lay the bike down or hit the tank head on. The tank would probably win in that encounter. So I started skidding sideways for maximum friction. And then when I got about from here to the doorway, the fourth memory popped up, which was ascending a path called the Roof of Africa, which basically boulders about the size of these chairs. And I was on a BMW. It was a horribly inappropriate thing for me to do. You had to bounce the front tire up over each one of those. So when I got about from here to there, that memory spurred a thought. I straightened the motorcycle back out to face the baboons, pulled in the clutch down, shifted to first gear, redlined the engine, popped the clutch, and just yanked back as hard as I could with all my might. And I did a wheelie through the pack of baboons. It was biblical. They parted like Moses and the Red Sea. It was by far the coolest thing I'd ever done or ever will do in my life. But it sparked in me a real curiosity of what happened. That was my first creative thought in my whole mind. And it was so visceral, I think about it very frequently. You know, like as I passed through the pack, the daddy lunged at me, and you know, baboon jaws opened about that wide. And their clamping power apparently is just as rigorous as an alligator. He lunged at my leg. Fortunately, he missed. The mama scampered away with a little baby on her back. And then the adolescent is the one I remember the most. The adolescent looked up at me with the same expression that Jack Nicholson had looking at Peter Fonda in the movie Easy Rider. Have I seen that? And the expression is, man, that looks really cool, and this is a boring place. Do you have any room on the back of that thing? So that sprung in me this interest, this real passion on, you know, how do creative people who have to innovate on command every single day come up with that? Because this was once in a lifetime for me. So that began my search, and now it's been more than 30 years. Now I'm apparently not the only person that has this obsession. Perhaps we all should. Because the message out of that innovative experience for me was innovate or die. So for the Fortune 500 since the year 2000, 51% of them have tanked. Looking ahead to the next 15 years, 47% of the jobs that exist today are scheduled to be obsolete. 1,500 CEOs were surveyed by IBM and looking at what criteria are you looking at in future leaders. Their number one dominant trait they're looking for is creative problem solving, the ability to innovate on command. Now, the worst is this last statistic. There's a book, a woman was researching the thesis of Thoreau. He said most men lead lives of quiet desperation. She sought to find out, is this indeed true? And unfortunately, she found that men at retirement age, 67% judge themselves to be living a life of quiet desperation. Okay, this is horrible. So I feel like this discovery that Dr. Hunt and I have made have implications not just in the corporate sector of innovating to make our organizations move forward, but I think this has enormous implications for self-actualization. Now, about once a week, I have this image go through my head. When I hear of another organization or a person who has not kept up with the times, I imagine a dinosaur driving an Edsel to a Blockbuster to rent a videotape of a Chuck Norris movie. And then, well, you know, Chuck Norris had great innovation advice. He said, number one, find out what does not work. And then number two, don't do that. It was very insightful. Now, I would like to share with you lessons that I have gotten in the context of this innovation on command. And I want to give to you lessons that I have learned from spectacular teachers. And a lot of lessons are not very pleasant, and they're not fun, and I'm not the hero, nor am I a victim, but it was an experience that lends itself to improving my innovation skills. Now, the concerns that I heard from you in our pre-conference survey came out like this, these three things. Now, you have a copy of this in your seat. What did we learn from you? Your three concerns that because we have additional time today, normally a keynote speech is an hour. This is more of a speech combined with a training, so you have this data that we're going to work through, and we're going to open the floor for dialogue to actually practice the innovation model. You also have a workbook, a 6-page workbook, which gives you answers to all the questions that come up in the innovation process. But the 3 things that you identified as your concerns were, number 1, how do we bring innovation resources to our meetings? Because really everyone ought to think as if they were an innovator at all times. And then number 2, how do we deal with shorter attention spans? I have 4 children, and my wife looks at me as if I was one of the children. So we really have 5 people with short attention spans in our life. And this is a real concern. How do we accommodate that when we've got 1,000 of them all in one room? And then the third big concern that came up is how do we innovate the meeting experience? Because it is moving ahead so fast that we've got to keep up, or someone else will innovate, someone else will disrupt, and we'll be out of business. Now, I want to cover up 4 quick definitions. A discovery is an accidental random thing, like penicillin or Teflon. Anybody know the Teflon story? He cut open a tank of Freon and discovered a white powder in there. He wasn't looking for the slippery substance known to make it. He stumbled across it. Same with Teflon, same with Viagra, same with North America. And I don't want to denigrate my own discovery, but it was a discovery. We were looking, we were not sure what we were looking for, but we found the innovation secrets of top performers. We just got them all together and we examined them under a microscope, and we found out by good fortune what they all did in common. The second, this creative is very important. We have got to stimulate the organs of creativity in our children and encourage that through a lifetime, because that's where the random mutation happens in life. Innovation is different from those 2 because it is deliberate. It is on purpose. It is purposeful. It is active. It is creative, but it is useful and it is feasible. It has utility. Okay? Creative might be creative just for creativity's sake. Art is fun. For years I took watercolor painting classes, and to this day I am no good. Okay? The one single piece of art I've created that I like, I made out of neon with watercolor. That's one out of like 1,000 that I have created. Now, the 4th definition, leadership, moving a group towards a goal. The role of the leader in serving the organization has got to create an environment that supports an innovative culture. I learned that on Outward Bound. Up in the upper left-hand corner, that's Mount Uncompahgre. There was we had to make it into this valley that's portrayed right here. We had 5 days. He gives us a map, a compass, a ruler, and a pencil. This is after 2 weeks. This is 0 degrees, okay? He says, I'll see you there in 5 days. Go get them. All of a sudden, that vacuum of him not being there made me acutely aware of how vitally important a good leader was, because we were complete spasms. This was in college. I did this for college credit. A month in Colorado down near Durango. My toe is still numb from that experience. I remember our instructor saying, as we're now panicking, as he says, he's walking out the door. We asked about that. Well, what do we do? He says, well, number 1, learn from every experience, from every failure. It will give you context for your next decisions. And that stuck with me. And that was 1976. It stuck with me till now, a long time. They came in real handy later on when I was mountain climbing in the Spanish Peaks. My friend Chris and I, and we got to the top. It was the middle of the afternoon, and above the tree line, storms roll in very quickly. And this beautiful sunny summer day became horrifying because it was cold, sheets of rain, and it was dark, and then the lightning began. And on a mountaintop in a rock field, that's a bad place to be. There's nothing else except you that will attract the lightning. And so we hunker down as the sheets of rain come in, and you really can feel lightning. And really, the static electricity does really build. And we're now in full-on panic. What do we do? And I'm just trying to think of all the good rules of thumb I could possibly think of to save my life. And I'm looking down the hill. I can't see the path anymore. And then a bolt of lightning hits behind me, and it illuminates the path out. If I had stared at the lightning, I'd have been blinded. But by luck, I was looking downhill, and I waited. Now I can figure out where to go. Another lightning bolt hit, and I had found a way out. So I found that learn from everything, it gives you context. Turns out that that's one of the 4 cardinal virtues. I learned that several decades later. But courage and justice are obvious. The last one is temperance. But the third one is called prudence. And that's another Greek word for that is phronesis, which means make a good decision set in the context of a good life. And that's the life, that is the lesson that leadership ought to be about, creating the context for the right things to happen in the organization. Now, these are the 4 prerequisites. This is the environment, or the petri dish. Now, when you hire people who have an intrinsic curiosity, an intrinsic motivation about what they do, because that, the neurochemistry of curiosity, is cortisol. There's a thing called the diurnal cortisol response, where we get a dose of it upon awakening. You know that experience you have when you wake up in the morning, your mind is awake, but your body is asleep? It's that dose of cortisol that stimulates us to get up and get going. So they've got to be already curious about your subject matter for them to innovate. They also have to have domain expertise. Malcolm Gladwell, in his book Outliers, he said that the magic number is 10,000 hours. Some people say it's really 10 years. If you look at a bell curve, the average super innovator has been in their business about 10 years before brilliant ideas occur to him or her. Now, for me, guys like me can provide innovation skills and resources. The real problem in the innovation world is we don't teach innovation skills. It is a craft, it is a set of cognitive schools, but we don't teach it. We don't give people that framework. So the answer is, I did the survey in advance as I asked you, what should we do to address meeting the needs of the media industry in terms of innovation? One of your top answers was provide content, more content. In specific, provide a leadership track that equips leaders to be transformational leaders so that they create that environment for innovation to occur. Now, I learned that during an offshore deep sea fishing experience where it's after 2 days. The captain says, "Here, Dennis, put these on." Has anybody here ever worn a chainmail glove? Would anyone like to get a feel for it? He gave me raise your hand if you want to put this on. It's the weirdest feeling. Ready, catch. Wow. Good dodge. That was like dodgeball. It's very gentle, though. It's very gentle. He gives me 2 of those, and he says, don't get your hand between the rope and the boat. Okay. He said, don't hold on too tightly. Don't get your leg near the rope. Okay. And he says, if it gets away from you, don't worry about it. I got your back. I said, wow, what are we going after here? He said, give me a fish. We got a 3.5-foot fish. I thought he was going to cut the tail off and throw it in. No, he put the whole fish on a grappling hook, hooked it to a shot put, 4 bungee cords, and a climbing rope, threw the whole thing overboard, and then handed me the rope. And he said, just remember, I got your back. Well, it wasn't 30 seconds later before someone got a hold of that. And all of a sudden, those metal gloves were burning in my hands. And I can't hold on, I can't. What can I do? What should I do? He says, I got your back. And I didn't know what that meant, but I couldn't hold on. So I stepped back out of the rope and let it go and watched the rest of that climbing rope. So it was gone. About 5 seconds later, the entire boat heaves and shudders, just like it was a 40-foot boat. And I looked back, and what it meant was he had tied the end of the rope to a cleat on the back. He had my back. He created the environment, the structure, the tools so that I could have that experience. And that's what a transformational leader is supposed to do. And we, as meeting managers, we have to facilitate and organize and help and nudge and cajole people to understand that that is their role. And it's not an easy role to fulfill. Innovation leader is a lot like herding cats. And so for them to be a good cat herder, and really my favorite, so this is kind of a fun metaphor, but really my favorite term comes from the author Robert Greenleaf, who coined the term servant leader. So good leaders are a servant. They're not out in front shouting instructions, but they are a servant creating the conditions for innovation and a successful organization to be fulfilled. Now let me summarize the entire encyclopedia of what is innovation into these 3 terms, okay? And then we're going to pause, and we're going to apply that to the innovation industry, okay? ABC stands for AIM, Brainstorm, and Cognitive Computing. Now, our research came in the brainstorming. Lots of people can do this